In this video, I'll show you how to use n8n for free. Not just that, we'll also have a look at using free AI models and a free database for storing our knowledge base and conversation history. And then finally, I'll show you how to use NGROK to expose n8n on a public URL. This means you can access n8n from anywhere and integrate it into things like WhatsApp and Telegram. The easiest way to get all of this up and running is to use Docker Desktop. So go over to docker.com, then download and install Docker Desktop. If you're a Windows user, you might be asked to enable WSL, so simply copy the command that Docker Desktop will give you and run it in PowerShell. The first step is to download the n8n image. So from the search bar, search for this official n8n image, click on Pool, and afterwards we can go to the Images tab. To start up an n8n instance, all we have to do is click on this Run button. Then from the optional settings, we can give our container any name. I'll just call it n8n. Then for the host port, we can enter something like 5678. At this point, we want to select a port that's not already being used by another application. But for n8n, that's typically 5678. Then under volumes, we can select any folder on our local device. I simply created a new folder called data within an n8n folder. Then under container path, we need to enter the following: /home/node/.n8n. And it needs to be called exactly this. This is where n8n will store its data by default. And that's all we have to do. Let's click on Run, and this will start up our n8n instance. And we can also see the URL to access n8n at the bottom of this log. Also, if we click on the Containers tab, we can see our n8n instance over here. And of course, we can click on this button to open n8n in the browser. On the sign up form, let's enter our email, first name, last name, and a password. Then on this screen, enter your email address and click on Send me a free license key. You should receive an email similar to this. Simply copy your license key, then back in n8n, click on your profile, settings, click on Enter Activation Key, paste in that key, and click on Activate. And that's it, you're now ready to use n8n. Let's create our very first workflow. At the top right corner, click on Create Workflow, and let's rename our workflow to whatever we want, like My Awesome Workflow. Every workflow in n8n starts with a trigger. Now, triggers can be anything. When we click on Add First Step, we can see all the different triggers that are available. We can trigger our workflows manually, or our workflows can be fired off by events from external systems. For instance, with the Gmail node, our workflow could be triggered when a new email is received. We can also run workflows on a schedule, call them from external systems using webhooks, from form submissions, from other workflows, or if we're building an AI assistant, we can use the on-chat message node, which is what I'm going to use. So we can close this node, and this will now allow us to open a chat window. And if we send anything like hey, nothing actually happens as we haven't added an AI agent yet. Let's click on Add, then under AI, let's add an AI agent. We don't have to change anything in this node. Let's simply go back to the canvas, and let's have a look at this agent node. The AI agent node takes in a couple of inputs: the chat model, memory, and tools. The chat model is effectively the AI brain for this agent. So let's click on Chat Model, and here you can see a whole list of providers that are supported by n8n, like Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, and a lot more. Now, most of these are paid services, and I promise you at the start of the video that everything we do here will be free. So what we'll do is add the Ollama chat model node. So you might be wondering, what the heck is Ollama? Ollama is a fantastic tool that makes it super easy to run open source models on your own machine. Now, I do want to point out there are other services you could use as well, like the NGROK chat model node, which you can use to connect to grok.com, and they allow you to use the service for free, but of course, certain usage limits will apply. Another option is to use the model runners within Docker Desktop. This also allows you to download and run open source models on your own machine. But the reason I'm using Ollama over NGROK or Docker Desktop is that Ollama offers way more models to choose from. Luckily, setting up Ollama is really easy. Go to ollama.com and download and install Ollama. And afterwards, all we have to do is download a model. So we can browse all the different models from the models page, and we can also sort by the most popular models. So we've got OpenAI's GPT open source models, DeepSeek R1, Gemma 3, Qwen 3, and much, much more. All of these models come in different sizes. We have everything from a tiny 1.5 billion parameter model, which can probably run on a potato, all the way up to 671 billion parameters. For this tutorial, I will be using the OpenAI open source model, and more specifically, the 20 billion parameter model. Now, to download these models, all you have to do is copy this command, then run that in your command prompt or terminal. And afterwards, you should be able to test the model by saying something like, hey, and here we can see the chain of thought because this is a reasoning model along with the final answer. Now it's time to use this model in n8n. So let's double click on the Ollama chat model node. Then under credentials, let's click on create new credential. And on this page, we need to provide the base URL and an API key. Now we don't have an API key in this instance. And if we try to save this, we will get an error message. Because we're running Ollama in a Docker container, we need to change the base URL slightly. Let's replace localhost with host.docker.internal. And when we click on retry, the connection is successful. Let's save this. Now we might get this error message, so all I'm going to do is save the workflow. Let's refresh n8n. And now when we open up the Ollama node, we should see all the models that we downloaded so far. So I'll select my model. Let's go back to the canvas. And now we can already test our agent. Let's open the chat and let's say, how many R's are in the word strawberry? And of course, we get our response back. Now there's an issue with this agent. It's got no conversational memory. Let me show you. So I'll say my name is Leon. So of course the agent will say, it's nice to meet you, Leon. But watch what happens when I ask it, what is my name? And now the agent is saying, I don't know. What gives? Well, the problem is, each time we send a message to the agent, that agent is seen as a standalone message. We're not passing the conversation history along with the prompt. Now, thankfully, n8n makes it super easy to include the conversation history. All we have to do is attach memory. So when we click on this memory input, we have a couple of options here. The easiest is to add simple memory, and we can set the amount of messages that should be included in the context, like the last 5 messages, or I'm just going to increase this to the last 20 messages. And this means when we test the agent again by saying, my name is Leon, we can ask it, what is my name? And now the agent remembers. Now the simple memory node works, but it's really not ideal. The conversation is only stored in memory. What that means is if we had to restart our n8n instance, the conversation memory will be lost. Let me show you. If we go to Docker Desktop and stop this n8n instance and then start it back up again, we can go back to n8n and ask, what is my name? And now the conversation history is lost. A better solution would be to store the conversation in a persistent database. Thankfully, that's incredibly easy and free as well. I'm going to remove this node, and under memory, let's add Postgres chat memory. Then under credentials, let's create a new credential, and now we have to provide the host, the database name, user, and password. Now we don't know what these are because we haven't created our database yet. So back in Docker Desktop, let's search for PG Vector, and let's simply pull this image. Then from our list of images, look for our PG Vector image, which we just downloaded, and click on Run. Under Optional Settings, let's give it a name like n8n Postgres. Under the host port, let's set it to 5432. Under the host path, I'm going to create a new folder called Postgres, and let's select this folder. Under the container path, enter /var/lib/PostgreSQL/data. Then under environment variables, we need to create a variable for our username, which I'll set as Postgres, and let's set our password to Postgres as well. And finally, let's set our database name as n8n. Now, of course, you should use a better username and password than this, but this is good enough for the tutorial. Let's click on Run, and our Postgres database should now be running on port 5432. So back in n8n, let's set the host as host.docker.internal. Then for the database name, change it to n8n, and for the user, we added this Postgres, and that was also our password. Then for the port, change this to 5432. Let's click on Save, and our connection was successful. Awesome. I'm also going to increase the length to 20 messages, and I'm also going to rename this node to memory. I'm going to create a new session, and let's say, my dog's name is Ruby. In the logs, we can see something interesting. First, we're retrieving all the messages from the database. Then we're invoking Ollama to generate the response, and then we're calling the database again to append the new message to the existing conversation history. Of course, let's ask, what is my dog's name? And the agent says my dog's name is Ruby. Cool, this all works. Now, watch what happens when I stop our n8n instance. In fact, I'm going to stop the database as well. Then I'll start both of these up again. And back in n8n, let's ask, what is my dog's name? And because the conversations are now persisted, the agent was able to recall my name. This conversation history becomes critical if you are building customer-facing chatbots. We can also use this Postgres database to store our custom knowledge base. This is perfect for building a Q&A agent that is able to answer questions from our own data. For instance, let's say we've got this Google Drive folder where we upload all of our invoices. Whenever I upload new invoices to this folder, I want our agent to be able to answer questions from any of these documents. Well, thankfully that's really easy to do in n8n. We could create a separate workflow for this, but because this is such a simple example, I'm simply going to scoot the agent up, then I'll press Tab, or you can simply click on this Add button, and let's scroll down to add another trigger, and this time we will be using an app event. Let's search for Google Drive, and under Triggers, let's select On Changes Involving a Specific Folder. I'm going to rename this node to File Created, then under Credentials, let's click on Create New Credential, and now we have to provide a client ID and a client secret. Now this is one of those things that's way easier to implement in the n8n Cloud instance. And by the way, you can try n8n Cloud for free using the link in the description. But since we're self-hosting n8n, we have to set all of this up ourselves. But truth be told, it's really not that difficult. Go to cloud.google.com, sign into your Google account, and then click on Console. And don't worry, this is also free to use. The first thing we need to do is to create a project. So let's click on New Project. I'll call it n8n Local. And let's click on Create. Cool, now let's select our project. Then under Navigation, click on APIs and Services. Now this is where you'll go to enable access to any Google service, whether that's Gmail, Google Calendar, Google People, the Gemini AI models. What you need to do is go to Library, then search for the service you're trying to access. Like in our instance, Google Drive. So let's click on Google Drive API. Let's click on Enable. And just like that, our project now has access to Google Drive. Now let's go to OAuth consent screen. Click on Get Started. And this is that little pop-up that shows up when users need to select their Google account and authorize access. So for the app name, I'll just call it n8n Local. I'll select my email. Let's click on Next. For the audience, select External and click Next. Then enter your contact email, click Next, click on Agree, click on Continue, and click on Create. Now we're almost done, I promise. Let's click on Audience, click on Publish App, Confirm, and finally click on Clients, Create Client. Under Application Type, select Web Application. For the name, let's enter n8n Local again. Then when we scroll down to this Authorized Redirect URIs, click on this button. And now, back in n8n, copy this URL and paste it into this field. Click on Create. And finally, we have our client ID and secret. Let's copy this, add it to client ID, let's copy the secret, and add that to n8n as well. When you scroll down, you'll see the sign in with Google button. Select your Google account, and under advanced, simply continue to n8n local, select all of these permissions, click on continue, and now we're successfully connected. Thankfully, we only have to set this up once. Right now, continuing with this node, let's go to the folder list, and let's select invoices, and under watch for, let's select file created. This means this workflow will be triggered whenever a file is created in that invoices folder. And initially what I'm going to do is actually clear out this folder, and when we run this workflow, we actually get an error message because we don't have any files in that folder yet. So I'm going to upload this single invoice from Anthropic. Now when we run this workflow, we get this one item back. Now this doesn't give us the content of the file itself. This is simply a trigger saying, hey, a file was just created in that folder, and here's some metadata about that file. What we need to do next is actually download that file locally so that we can use it. Again, let's search for Drive, and under Google Drive, let's look for Download File. Thankfully, we don't have to create our credentials again. What we need to do is under File, change it from List to By ID, and on the left-hand side, scroll down and find this ID field. Simply copy this and drop it into this field. Now, when we click on Execute Step, we can see the file that we just downloaded on the right-hand side. Now what we need to do is grab the contents from that file and upload it into our database. So let's click on Add, and let's search for Postgres, and select the Postgres PG Vector Store. And under Actions, let's select Add Documents to Vector Store. Now we'll reuse the same Postgres database we created earlier, and under Operations Mode, select Insert Documents. We can leave the table name and the embedding batch size as is. Then back to the canvas, we need to add an embedding function and a document loader. Let's start with the document loader. Let's select the default data loader, change the type of data to binary. This will use the file that we downloaded from the download node, and I'll leave everything else on the default values. Now under the embedding function, we need to select a provider. Of course, we're doing everything for free, so let's select Embeddings Ollama. Now we need to select a special kind of model that will convert our document content into embeddings. Now for this, we will be downloading the Nomic Embed model from Ollama. Now you've seen this in action already. Simply copy this command and run it in your command prompt or terminal. Then from n8n, all we have to do is select that embedding model. Cool, so we should be left with something like this. Let's execute the workflow. This will download that file and upload it into our database. I'm actually going to upload another invoice from OpenAI and run that through our workflow as well. Now that we have our custom knowledge base that gets updated whenever we drop a file into this Google folder, all we have to do is make that database available to our agent. Under Tools, search for Postgres and select the Postgres PG Vector Store node. We can use the description to tell the agent when to use this tool, like use this tool to retrieve documents related to invoices. Then I'm going to rename this node to Invoices. Now we also have to attach the embedding function to this node, and what we can do is actually share the same embedding function that we used over here. Cool, now let's open the chat. I'm going to start a new session, and let's say, give me a breakdown of my last few invoices. And we get these results back. So the table looks a little bit messy, but we can see the ChatGPT invoices on the first line, and the Claude subscription on the second line. Now, of course, we can keep adding tools to this agent, like the web search tool, maybe we want to read our emails, etc. But I would like to wrap this video up by showing you how you can access this instance from anywhere and integrate things like WhatsApp and Telegram to this workflow. But before I do, consider hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel for more n8n content. Now, since we're running n8n locally on localhost, we won't be able to access it from outside of our network. And this means that third-party applications like WhatsApp and Telegram won't be able to interact with our workflow. So in order to make our n8n instance available to the outside world, we will be using a service called NGROK. Simply set up an account and, from the dashboard, download and install NGROK. Finally, copy this command and run it in your command prompt or terminal. Now that NGROK has been authenticated, all we have to do is expose the n8n port using this command. So again, let's copy this, and all we have to do is change the port to whichever port n8n is running on. For us, that's 5678. So let's run this. NGROK will now give us this public domain. When we open this in the browser, we will see this first time message. Simply click on Visit Site. Then let's sign into our n8n instance. And look at that, we can see our workflow. So we can see our workflow, and if we open chat, let's send a message. And of course, everything still works. But this is using a model and database that's running on your own machine. There is one more improvement we can make. When we double-click on the chat message node, we can switch this to make publicly available, but here's an issue. We still get this localhost URL, which is not going to work. Instead, we need to configure n8n to use the public URL. So what we need to do is stop our n8n instance, then from images, let's create a new instance. Under optional settings, let's call this n8n NGROK, and for the port, we'll set 5678. Then for the volume path, let's use the same folder we used the first time around, otherwise we'll lose all of our data. And for the container path, we'll use home/node/.n8n again. Under environment variables, let's create a variable called webhook URL, which is equal to this public domain generated by NGROK. Cool, let's run this. And if we refresh n8n, if we make this public, we can now see the public-facing NGROK URL. So we can actually save this, we can activate our workflow, and now the Google Drive trigger will automatically listen for any changes to that folder. And of course, we can copy this URL, open a new tab, and now we've got this interface where we can chat to our agent. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more n8n content. Let me know down in the comments if you would like me to show any other n8n features. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.